Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I will give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own world views. Today, I would like to introduce you to Kandrea. She is here to just talk about her life, the different things that have led her to where she is today between entertainment, creativity, technology, lots of different directions we can go in. So I'm excited to hear from her today. So Kandrea, why don't you go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself and say hello.
Hey, thanks so much for having me today, Sarah. I really appreciate your time and for inviting me here. My name is Kandrea Wade, and I'm currently a PhD student in the Information Science Department at the University of Colorado Boulder. There, I'm a member of the Identity Lab led by Dr. Jed Brubaker and the Internet Rules Lab led by Dr. Casey Fiesler. My department in information science is centered around human-computer interaction, and my research specifically focuses on algorithmic identity and the digital surveillance of marginalized groups. So in the last year, I've been researching diversity, race, and gender in AI. And along with my research, I also seek to discover and assist in creating proper ethical regulations and education around these topics. So backing up from there a little bit, I have a background in over 15 years of entertainment and media, as you were mentioning. And my interests have really evolved from demographic programming for entertainment and media to corporate user ethics and legal protections for the digital citizen. Currently, I'm researching how we can harness entertainment and marketing in media and fine arts as educational tools for translating like really complex messages to vulnerable and marginalized communities. I think that's about it. And I have a bachelor's in technical theater from the University of Texas at Arlington, and I have a master's in media culture and communications from New York University.
Cool. It sounds like you've done a little bit of everything, and I can kind of see where your like bit of a change in career path might have landed. So what were you doing in the entertainment industry?
Oh, that's a great question. So, in that 15 years of experience, I started working at Six Flags over Texas. I was working at a theme park as a technician. I was a lighting technician and did a bunch of other things. But I did theater, which I like I said, is my bachelor's is in. I was a lighting designer at a concert venue. But I've done all sorts of things in fine arts, events, television, film. I have worked for Viacom CBS, Bravo World of Wonder, South by Southwest, ACL, like Austin City Limits, ABC Disney. I was a technical director for the Big D NYE Dallas New Year's celebration and a lot of stuff like that. And this is in addition to also holding full-time positions as like a technical director. I was teaching at a college, production coordinator for major venues and city-funded cultural arts centers. And that was across Texas and in New York. So that's what I was doing in entertainment. And it's been a little bit of everything from like being up in lifts and catwalks wearing harnesses and hanging lights, or, having a bunch of students in the scene shop and making sure no one hurts themselves.
So what made you decide, oh, I want to go and get a PhD?
Yeah. So I went to NYU. I think what happened was I was working in events. I was firsthand. I was on the ground. I love that. I love being in the middle of the action. But I wanted to start working on maybe the corporate side of entertainment. And when I was looking for a way to do this, I started thinking about demographic programming. So I'm thinking about programming, specifically for areas, for populations, for certain groups of people in media and entertainment. And so I decided to go to NYU to get my master's in media culture and communications. And there I learned about, in one of the very first classes I had to take, about user data and algorithmic identity, and became super fascinated with the concept of, algorithmic identity and the implications and ethics around user data. Who's seeing it, who's buying it, who's selling it, what's being done with it. So I started taking all of my electives in the applied statistics department and kind of merged and made my own master's in a way, between media culture and communications with what I was interested in surrounding data and information science and ethics. And so once I finished that program, I was really leaning toward the the ethics side of it and algorithmic identity. And I never thought I would do a PhD. I really didn't. Um, but I ended up graduating from NYU a semester earlier than I thought I would. So I was like, well, while I have the gusto, while I have this energy to keep going academically, let me put in some applications and see what happens. And I'm really happy that I decided to do this, and I've learned so much and been able to really like stretch myself as a person in this new academic realm.
And so, what are you learning in the realm of diversity, race, gender, that sort of research that you were talking about within the AI tech industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm learning a lot about. I mean, I think a lot of us know, or we're starting to learn about the bias and discrimination that happens within AI and within these technical systems that a lot of companies and even ourselves are relying on these days. And so I think that a lot of people are starting to learn themselves or by what you're seeing in the media that the same type of bias and discrimination that we have in the real world is starting to be reflected within these systems. And what I'm learning about is why this is happening and what do we do about it. Do we do anything about it? How do we prevent it? Do we retool and rebuild the systems that already exist, or do we scrap them and start all over again and build a better future from there? And so I'm looking at mainly right now that I've kind of done all of this like preliminary work on understanding what's happening. How do we then educate the populations that are most at risk of the implications of being sorted within systems? How do we actually reach them where they're at, speak their language, and inform them and educate them about things that they typically would never hear about, which is why they often end up being most affected by the things that are happening within these systems. So that's why I'm looking at things like fine arts and media and entertainment and these informal learning techniques to be able to educate people on these very complicated topics.
And is there a good solution, answering the question of, do we retool everything? Do we try to change it? Do we try to make it relearn? Is there an answer?
At the moment, I mean, a lot of people have different opinions. I have to say, I don't think there is one solution. I think that a lot of it has to do with educating the user. And so I think it's a top down and bottom up issue. I think the bottom up is educating the users so they can be smarter about the decisions that they're making, about their digital footprint, where they're seen and how they're representing themselves within systems. But I think that there just needs to be also regulation coming down from the top on what is able to be done with data, what is, how capable are these systems of making real decisions that affect people's lives. And so there's the two bigger aspects there. But when it comes to what do we do about, what's happening within systems now, one of the biggest things that I usually talk about is like, do we really need AI to solve all of our problems? Do we really need computers to do things that humans sometimes we're great at doing, sometimes we're terrible at doing, or do we just need to train those humans better? So I think the question that I'm exploring right now is I think we need to take a better look at AI being, is it really necessary in solving all of the world's problems, or is it just like the hottest, newest, most convenient thing? Because the computing and processing power is really what the benefit is, large amounts of data very quickly, the predictive analysis that it does. But, when you have bias that's built into a system that is human bias, and now it's running at a bigger, faster speed at a higher capacity, the same problems are just now reflected at a bigger scale. So I think the question for me is, do we need to be using AI for everything?
And I think it's a great question to ponder. So, how are you getting to the people who, are being marginalized through AI bias? How are you taking these complicated ideas and filtering it down to something that's able to be understood without a PhD?
Well, that's an awesome question. I love the fact that I have experience in teaching and talking to students of all ages, and so from 5-year-olds up through people in their late 50s, early 60s, 70s. I've worked with a very wide range of people, and what their understanding is, or their level of like being able to conceptualize certain things. And so I think I'm using a lot of what I learned in entertainment and how and fine arts, and how you can reach people through sometimes nonverbal communication and through visual communication and through abstract means of communication, that these populations may be engaging with more than they may be learning in the classroom, or going to read a book in a library, or even having access to or going to a higher level education. I am looking at how to reach them through the things that they're already consuming. It's not everyone gets a college degree, but most people have a cell phone, and on that cell phone, most people are engaging in social media, or they're on TikTok, or they're content creating on YouTube. And so it's pretty uh, you know, it's pretty widespread, the usage of these things. And outside of social media, and entertainment in general is what people use as an escape. And so I know that people are already engaging in that type of learning, and maybe even discourse that's happening around some complicated subjects. So instead of trying to do this more formally in a classroom, how do we really use those platforms to infuse these messages that typically wouldn't be taught to these groups?
And as someone who like barely pays attention to what is being shown on TV or in the movies, is there, just being honest,
That's fair. That's totally fair.
is there is there some sort of representation in media outside of just social media of what is happening in AI?
There are some things. I mean, we all know the tropes in sci-fi. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest areas in entertainment where people feel that they get a lot of their quote unquote knowledge about what's happening in technology from. I would not say that all of it is accurate. I would be very careful about believing in everything you see in a science fiction movie, and a lot of it is doomscaping and making a good story, making a good plot. It's some of it is that bad, and some of it isn't that bad. Like the whole idea that AI is going to take over the world and hold us all hostage and things like that. I don't necessarily believe in that. Um, but there are some really great resources on, platforms like Netflix and Hulu, and some of these more independent production companies that are taking it upon themselves to either purchase and promote, or to produce their own types of documentaries or shows that are based around these topics. And so, for instance, Coded Bias, about facial recognition, about bias in facial recognition, released on Netflix recently, and that's a really great resource. But of course, in saying that, you'd have to be a person that wants to watch a documentary, and that's not necessarily for everyone. Um, but in releasing them on these platforms and in these more accessible ways where it can suggest something to you, or you can scroll through and find it, and you're already paying for the subscription, so you don't have to go outside of yourself and go seek out this information. It's just there. It's becoming more readily available to anyone who may have curiosity about it. And so I've seen a lot of uptick in documentaries and short series about these topics, but it's definitely starting to like proliferate down into what is the topics that are being talked about in TV shows and movies that are coming out nowadays too. So it's out there, it's happening slowly, and I'm hoping to be one of the people that can, speed up that change and get that information out there.
Yeah. Now, have you experienced any situations where AI bias has worked against you?
I'm it's all speculation. Let me put it that way. There are definitely times in life that myself as a black woman, I feel that perhaps there are different results in doing different things for maybe my white counterparts. My husband is white, and I do recognize that there are some differences in how we're sorted within systems, or things that are suggested to us, or recommendations. Um, but you know, I'll just leave it there and say that I can say that it's probably happened, but there's no way to prove it. And that's a lot of what the black boxing in the systems allows for, is not being able to prove what my suspicions are.
Right. So when you're getting like targeted ads or anything, is like the back of your mind doing the like, I know how the AI works and I know XYZ?
100%. 100%. And even if I'm looking at an ad for too long, now it thinks I'm obsessed with it. Or if it's and it's across all different types of platforms, all different sorts of platforms. It could be from social media to just, moving around in different websites, what notifications my phone starts to tell me about, like, oh, we saw you're thinking about taking a trip here. So let's start building a full itinerary for you. So yeah, it's once you understand how it's working on the back end, it's actually pretty obvious how we're all being targeted and that they have these profiles on us of who they think we are. Sometimes better than we know ourselves, but those profiles definitely exist and they know how to get us. I'm not going to lie. I've purchased several things from some targeted ads. So, it's
Yeah.
effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can definitely be effective. Now, where are you in your PhD program? Are you at the beginning, the end, in the middle?
I am right in the middle. I'm entering my third year of, hopefully, fingers crossed, only 5. But I will finish up my coursework this fall, and then I'll be moving into solely working on my research.
And do you know, like, your specific research, the main topic that you will be trying to solve?
Um, I think just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I think focusing on um, how we can use or partner with fine arts organizations and arts collectives and media and entertainment as informal educational tools. So I have a lot of things going on in the hopper, but I'm sure that at the end of all of this, I'm going to want to have some sort of bridge building that happens between academia and the entertainment industry.
And when you get your PhD, do you think you'll end up more back in the entertainment side of things?
Yeah, having worked in industry for so long, I mean, I had 14, 15 years in industry before I even decided to go back and get a master's. I started working very young. Um, I I really do like being in industry. I like the speed and the pace of things, and that's where I'm focused at heading back. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being an educator. I love being in academia. I've taught for a long time, like I said, various age groups and even at the college level. But I don't know if staying in an academic space is for me. I want to see where the work that I'm doing can be put into action in the companies on the other side of my brain. I have that academic side, and then I have that like technical entertainment side. And so I want to go back and see how that works. But I would never say no to, down the road somewhere, going back into academia, teaching, advising something. But right now, my sights are definitely focused on going back into industry once I graduate.
Yeah, that's understandable. So you mentioned that you started working really young.
hmm
What was that like and what was your experience growing up?
So I started working at around 16, 15, 16. And there was a combination of like working at summer camps with kids and things like that. But then I, started working as a technician at this theme park. And I was one of the youngest technicians that they had ever hired. And it was very much like a trust game that they had to, really believe that I was not going to hurt myself and that there, weren't going to be some liability issues. But I had really worked very hard in high school, in my high school theater department, to prove myself and to take over like the lighting section of the theater department and learn as much as I could, building sets and things like that. And so my supervisor at the time at the theme park, he really put a lot of trust in me. And I thank him to this day for giving me the opportunity to be so young working with these much older people, taking care of a bunch of theaters in a theme park. And I learned so much from that because I was, there were at least 5 different venues in the theme park, and I was driving parade floats and operating, CO2 machines under the stage. And I learned a lot about lighting and sound and what it takes to completely switch a theme park over in between seasons or holidays, and what it's like to drive vehicles through a park when the park is closed. And um it was an interesting experience, and I definitely, as much as I learned and I was given a lot of opportunity, there were a lot of walls and barriers that I faced. not only for being as young as I was, but also for being a Black female in a very white male dominated field. So I've definitely received my fair share of being told what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do due to my race or my gender, who I'm allowed to speak to and who I'm not allowed to speak to based on my race and gender. And this, outside of this is even outside of working in the theme park. This is all across the entertainment industry. I've definitely experienced what it's like when people just don't believe in you. When people don't believe that you're capable of completing a task, or because I was a shop floor woman and a technician, a technical director, and there's a lot of silencing that happens. There's a lot of minimalization that happens. There's a lot of um, just questioning of your capabilities. And so throughout my time, it definitely helps you to build a thick skin, which has helped me to moving into academia as well.
And so you developed a thick skin, but how were you able to deal with people saying or just like not having the confidence in you to be able to do something or saying you couldn't do something? How did you then succeed?
I mean, as unfortunate as it is, and you should never have to prove yourself to someone. I mean, everyone has to go through their chops and show that they know what they're doing and that they're qualified and competent. But there was a lot of going above and beyond in ways that maybe my peers weren't, to prove that I could stay later hours, I could lift heavier things, I could learn more than they could and be more knowledgeable about various parts of the job, and instead of just being focused on one. And that comes with consequences. I don't think anyone should have to go through that much just to be a player in the game, as other people from different races or demographics just are allowed a ticket for entry. There was definitely many, many hurdles and hoops and barriers that I came up across that have, left me with, psychological hurt around it. It makes you question your worth and your value as a person, but it's something that if you really want and you push for, um, and you work with other people around you. I mean, I worked with a lot of women, a lot of wonderful, wonderful women in this industry, and we all experience the same thing. And so there's also this culture of commiseration that happens, but there's also a culture of strength, really, of building each other up. And my what I consider my home theater in Texas, in Austin, Texas, it's primarily run by women, and very strong women that for I had a couple of jobs that did this, but that was a place where I felt like the respect was just so automatic, that the women were in charge and the women were the leaders, and you went to the women to ask your questions. You went to, those were your seniors in that field, and it's rare. I've had a couple of opportunities like that, but it really comes from just having people to commiserate with as well. But yeah, there's definitely emotional and physical scars that have come from um, not being believed in to be able to even do your job.
Yeah. And are you experiencing any of that now?
In academia, also a predominantly white male field, there are not a lot of people that look like me. And there are not a lot of people, unfortunately, there are not a lot of Black women. We're out there, we're growing. Um, but, the space that we do occupy, there's a lot of still silencing. There's a lot of trying to make us feel small, trying to discount the work that we're doing. And so I think it's just as important, like I was saying, in the entertainment industry, for us to all have support systems and to be together on this, and to be able to talk about the different techniques and tactics, not only for how to represent yourself and go about handling the world, but also how to do self-care. But I have to say, yeah, the same things unfortunately happen, and I just think that happens to be the plight of the Black woman in the world, no matter what industry that she's in.
And that's like horribly unfortunate. And as you said, you're growing, there's more of you. So hopefully, as life goes on, it gets better. I think that everyone should want that.
Absolutely.
Have you been the token Black woman in a lot of places you've been?
Oh, yeah. So, um, I grew up, um, okay, I have a bit of a weird history. So I was born in Germany. Both of my parents were in the military, and both my parents were in the army. And because of that, I was born in Germany in the late '80s, like a lot of U.S. kids who had parents in the military at the time. And we moved around a lot. I mean, there's a lot of diversity in military life, but once my parents had split and my mom and I had settled in like the Texas area, depending on where you are in schools that may be like more predominantly white in towns, certain cities, you're definitely the token. And then no matter where you go, unfortunately, as you move into like maybe like taking AP classes in high school or, like advanced placement, or you start moving further along in academia, or, you know, you're working with certain subjects and certain topics, there are less and less people that look like you. And I've definitely been called the Oreo. I'm black on the outside, white on the inside. I've received this type of treatment from white counterparts, and I've also received just my fair share of discrimination from black people, unfortunately, because I didn't fit the bill of, you know, I was not trusted, I guess, to fit into either bucket. And so that was definitely difficult to be the token for one side. And then you're like, I'm not the token because this side doesn't accept me either. So I don't really belong anywhere. Um, but yeah, I've always been kind of like, I stuck out like a sore thumb throughout all of my childhood. And, it's happening again now. There was a period in there in like high school and in college where I could blend in with the crowd, but it comes and goes in waves.
Hmm. And what has it been like being with your husband since he's white?
Um, he is thankfully um an incredible person. Obviously, I wouldn't have married him if he wasn't. Um, but that's just it's never been something that I mean, we've been together for 11 years, and it was never something that came up as like something that we had to talk about in the beginning, or get over. Like, his family is very open and accepting and my family is very open and accepting. It was never anything like that. um as we have lived and grown together, though, I find the most of our conversations about the differences between race are just explaining to him that, like, we you can't make the same assumptions about access that you have as a white male for me, and you can't make the same assumptions about, how easy or hard my life has been, or what I have the right to be upset about or not. And it's definitely a learning and growing process, and I can't necessarily expect him to really understand all the nuances of my lived experience, but we have really great and productive conversations when those moments come up. When I'm hurt about something or frustrated about something, or I'm seeing how the world is treating me differently than it's treating him, um, it's nice to be able to have someone that, even though we are not from the same background, can really absorb and sit and listen, which I think is the most important part. I listen to him just the same as he listens to me, and we both believe each other in our lived experiences, and I think that's the most important part.
That's really great to hear that, everything was accepting and you're still able to have learning moments and but it's also not like the center of the conversation.
Right. No, no. It's never been like that. And I have actually dated people previously that, that were outside of my race, that there were family issues, or there were, things that came up down the road that were not so nice. And so it's nice to be with a person where that's never been a concern for him or his family.
So switching topics a little bit, one of the things that we talked about before we started recording, sometimes my guests offer resources, books they really like, YouTube, movies, whatever it may be. And you were saying that you don't necessarily feel like you fit in any buckets. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, oddly enough, for this question, it was really hard for me to think of an answer of, something that would resonate with me or my personal experiences, just one thing or a handful of resources. But then I really understood why. And I guess I've always felt this way. And this, going back to what I was talking about a few minutes ago, I'm kind of an anomaly or like a unicorn. My past and my present and my future have no solid through line that anyone can follow. And, my life based off of my race or my gender has not been typical, or what people would consider quote unquote typical. And that's just due to where I've lived and the choices that I've made and the careers that I've followed. And I just don't think that there's any one story or piece of writing or media that can really encompass any part of who I am. And maybe that can be said for everyone. But I'm actually really proud of that. When people get to know me, I always get the comment that I've lived a million different lives in one lifetime. And I pride myself in the fact that you can't really pin me down or sort me into one box. I'm very confusing. And my parents set the bar really high and achieved a lot and lived extremely interesting and diverse lives, traveling across the world and experiencing all that life has to offer. And I watched them do this as I was growing up, and they challenged me to do the same. And so I've set out to make that my goal, is to, live the most wild and varied and unique life that I possibly can.
That's really cool. Have you gotten the chance to travel all over as well?
So, I the only places that I've been internationally since I've been an adult are Mexico and like the Caribbean, places like that. Especially being in Texas, they're, fairly easy to get to. But I've done a lot of travel across the US. I've lived in several different states here. And then, the pandemic didn't help anything. But there were definitely plans coming up here in the future I want to go back to Germany and visit where I was born. Um, I definitely have plans to go to Europe and Japan, and I mean, travel everywhere. My parents have been to the Middle East. They've been to, I mean, you name it. At least one of my parents has gone somewhere, and I would love to retrace their steps. They had so many cool adventures. Even while my mom was pregnant with me. There are pictures of me in different countries that I've never been to physically as a person, but I was there with her. So I'd love to retrace those steps.
Yeah. Now, were they traveling solely through the military?
No, so some of it was through the military and some of it was like once you're in Europe, it's a little bit easier to get around between countries. And so some of it was where they were stationed, and then they would just set off to go visit all the places or countries or areas around wherever they were stationed. And so that allowed them to see a lot of the world by happening to be placed in one area, and then they got to kind of like spread out and go adventure.
Now, is there something or anything else that you would like to share that, helps explain why you're an anomaly, you're a unicorn in this world?
I feel like, and I encourage everyone to be this way. I feel like so much of a student of life, and I'm always learning, but in order to do that, I have to leave myself open to learning. And so I try not to define myself either. I try not to settle on an identity or a definition of who I am as a person, because that doesn't allow for the flexibility to pick up something new or to learn something from someone else. And so I always consider myself an artist and a teacher first and foremost. And in being a teacher, I am also myself a student. And I just have this sense of adventure in learning, whether that be through travel or through actually sitting down and reading a book. Um, that there's just more out there than I can ever consume in my lifetime, more out there than any of us can ever consume in our lifetimes. And there's no way that if I were to try to live one life where I just decided to do this one thing and live this one path and be this one person, I wouldn't be able to have all these varied experiences where I get to soak up all of the different flavors of the world, of the universe. And so I think that that really contributes to why I live this like unicorn type of life where I'm like, okay, well, I did that. Check that box. This was a good 5-10 years in life. What's the next adventure?
Do you have some check boxes that you want to check off in the future?
Um, for sure. Travel is definitely one of them. I started off on stage and in front of the camera when I was really young. There's always something in the back of my head where I'd like to pursue a career and be famous for, being a singer, an actor, or, be on Broadway or something like that. So I don't know, maybe I'll do that in my 50s. Um, uh, being being a parent, by whatever that means. I have two really lovely fur babies, my two cats, and whether that means being a parent to my own biological children or children that I choose to, have in my life, wherever they've come from, or even if that just continues to be, the parent to my students. I very much am protective over my students and consider them my kids, and I care about every aspect of their lives. I love that too. So whatever being a parent means down the road, I feel like I've already served that role a couple of times, but yeah, whatever that means. So there's definitely some boxes out there to be checked. Being a beach bum and retiring somewhere in South Florida, that's also on the list. So we'll see. There's a lot of different directions this could go.
Yeah, and some things that, can happen in a long while and don't need to happen right away. So you've talked a lot about teaching. What sort of teaching have you been doing throughout your life?
Um, so I started um in summer camp environments. Um, where I was, teaching classes. I would teach theater classes, dance classes, but I was just a regular day camp counselor. And then from there, in my undergrad, I was a part of an after school tutoring program where I became one of the site coordinators. And I was actually creating the curriculum and the curricula for helping students in vulnerable and marginalized communities to help them pass standardized tests that were in the state of Texas. And so, um, I was over science and math. And so I was teaching students, after school and coming up with the different activities and things they would do. And even back then, I was trying to be so creative with it. I wasn't, especially with science, we weren't sitting down in the classroom and I was trying to teach them concepts. Like we were outside and I was teaching them about photosynthesis, or I was heating up water and putting ice cubes in water and doing put a spoon in the water and put a pencil in the water and teaching them about conductivity and things like that. Um, from there, let's see. That was in undergrad. And then when I graduated with my bachelor's, after a couple of years working as a lighting designer, I became an instructional associate and technical director at a junior college in the area where I completed my bachelor's. And I was there, doing theater, teaching students. I basically had the scene shop and I had lab hours. And so students would come to me and I would instruct them. We would actually, build the sets for the plays and the shows that were coming up and hang the lights and do all the sound and everything. But I was also, teaching them the basic concepts of scenic construction and sound design and lighting design. And then from there, I actually worked for a test prep company, and I was a college admissions advisor and a senior enrollment coordinator. And so we were not only helping students to walk through the process of how to get into college, picking schools, the applications for schools, what your chances are, and how to make your chances better to get, into the school of your choice, not your choice, but and to get into a good school and, variety, lots of applications to lots of places is the way to do that. Everything was, very above board. And, we didn't fill out applications for any of the students. We didn't do any of the work for them. We just really gave them all of the tools that, a lot of students don't know what the really selective process is to, for college admissions. And so we walked them through that. And then, test prep for all of the standardized tests, SAT, ACT, even high school and elementary level tests, and then went up into grad level, MCAT, all grad admissions tests. And so that was probably the last time that I worked in education with what you would traditionally consider students. Right after I got my master's from NYU, I worked in media and marketing for a company in New York, and I was doing some training there for employees. And then, of course, now at CU Boulder, where I'm a PhD student, I also teach. And so I'm a teaching assistant for the students, for the undergrad population at CU Boulder. And I've been doing that for the past 4 semesters. So I've varied in between having 30 students to having 90 students and all different types of topics.
Yeah. It's crazy that just all the different things, as you've said over and over, that you have experienced in just a short time.
Yeah, I feel very, very fortunate that I've been able to do so many things over such a short amount of time. Not all of them were out of choice. Some of them were out of desperation. Like I've definitely been a pet washer. I've definitely sold jewelry. I've been the head of a furniture department at a store. Just a bunch of different things, and those were more for money than for utility in my life, or like growth in my life. But you grow from every experience you have, and I've definitely taken away something from every single place that I've worked, or had the opportunity to contribute something.
Now, because you mentioned them, I would like to hear about your fur babies.
Yes, of course. So I have two. They are both gray. One's fully gray, and the other one is gray and white. I call them my grabies because they're my gray babies. And I always name my pets after breakfast foods. And so there is Grayson Sausage Gravy, and I call him Graceface. And then there is Flap Jackson, and I call him Jax. And Grayson came from Texas. They're both about 5. Grayson came from Texas. A friend had a litter of kittens and said, "Oh, I know you're looking for a cat. I have the perfect cat for you." I've always had cats all my life. And we had an older cat at the time who was getting up in years, and so I wanted to bring in a new baby into the house to try to like learn his behaviors and be prepared for that moment when he left us. And it worked out really well. So Grayson was with us. We moved to New York with Grayson, and then he was really lonely when his brother passed, and so we knew we had to get him a new friend. And so we were living in Harlem at the time and found a really great organization, New York City Animal Rescue Girls. And I Jackson came from the streets of Harlem, and he was fostered by this organization, and they took very good care of him. He got all the treatment he needed, and then he was brought over, and I told them exactly what I was looking for, just a good brother for Grayson, about the age, the demeanor, and it couldn't have been a better match. And so we lived with them in Harlem for 2 years, and then we've now been in Colorado with them for 2 years.
Awesome. I love when I get to hear about people as pets. Is there anything else that you would like to share before I start to wrap things up?
No, I guess if anything, I have really loved living my life as this unicorn. And I encourage everyone in your own beautiful and special and amazing way to try to live your life as a unicorn. Whether that means you ever leave your hometown or not, or you travel the world, or you just try a couple different jobs and industries, or I don't know, you take your kids on vacation or something. I just think there's so much out there in the world to learn, and there's so many people to learn from and so many cool experiences to be had. So I encourage everyone, as the world starts to open back up, hopefully, and everything with the pandemic starts to calm down a little bit. I just encourage everyone to be a unicorn and go out and find your little unique special in the world.
That's some great advice. Now, with all of my guests at the end, I ask a random question. So, nothing to do with what we've been talking about.
Okay.
And right, I throw it off the walls at the end. So my question for you, hopefully you have an answer,
Okay.
is what is your dream car?
Oh. Ooh. Um, it probably changes, but I'll tell you what it is right now. I'm a big fan of like bigger, boxier cars, like SUVs. I probably drive my dream car, but my little Tommy Toaster is so old. I drive a Scion XB, and I love my box car. I've moved an entire 1-bedroom apartment in that car. That's one of my dream cars. But I already have it, and I love it, and it's paid off. It's mine. The other one, if I had to get a new car, would be a Jeep Compass, actually. We were able to, when we drove from New York back down to Texas and we were moving to Colorado, we made a stop in Texas and came up here. We rented a Jeep Compass, and I got a lot of like really intimate time of driving that vehicle across the country. And it was nice. It was luxurious. It holds a lot on the inside. The cats loved it. That's like an A plus for me. So if I had to get another vehicle, especially living here in the Colorado mountains, it would be a Jeep Compass.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. I'll be leaving a lot of good things down in the description. So the Netflix documentary that Kandrea mentioned, Coded Bias, along with her personal information, her Twitter, her website. She's pretty much just Kandrea Wade everywhere. You can find her on the CU Boulder website, and everything will then link you to if you want to contact her. She's welcome to talk to other people and learn more about things. And of course, if you would like to connect with the podcast, our website is in the description, and that can bring you to all of the social media. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. The email is right there as well. And if you would like to support the podcast monetarily, we always like to have Patreon supporters. Thank you so much, Kandrea, for spending time with me today. I've had a great time listening to all about you. And to my listeners, thank you for taking the time out of your day to hear a new story. Until next week, bye.
Thanks so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. Everyone go find your unicorn. Bye.